Hello,
Morning.
good morning.
Hi, good to see you.
And you, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited to have a chat.
Yeah,
So, I know you have a topic in mind. Do you want to take the floor?
I do. I do. So it's kind of expanding a little on what I mentioned briefly in the last one. I can't remember how we or why we got onto it, but I said about how I've gotten into this not particularly helpful routine of not leaving the house very often.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's part of a wider thing that I've been experiencing for the last couple of years. And it's the first time in my life that I've really experienced loneliness.
Mm.
And it's, although it feels like, because I wanted to talk about it here because I've tried to write about it for my Substack, and I have like two half written articles, and there's just no, I can't seem to articulate in written form exactly how it feels or exactly how it is or the way that I experience it, or and there's not really any. I think with my articles often there is no sort of like takeaway points. It's just left for the reader to take from it what they want. But I do like to not make it totally about me, to sort of for it to be applicable to more people. And although this is, I am 100% sure, very applicable to most people in the world, there, especially now after we've kind of come through the COVID years and everything like that, it's when I write about it, I can't see that. I can't, or it just feels like I'm talking about my own loneliness. So I kind of wanted to have a conversation with you about it, just because then you're in the conversation too. Basically, I'm selfishly jumping. I'm selfishly using you to guide the conversation with me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's what we're here for, just to have a conversation and see where it goes. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really interesting the point you bring up about like I've been trying to write about this and there isn't a it can't be wrapped up into one article is kind of what I'm hearing. Like
Yeah.
there's no wrap up. You're just going to leave it open and that feels I wonder if because of the topic that kind of feels like part of like the pain, right? It's like
Mm.
loneliness is a to leave something kind of undone. It kind of seems to me in the same energy as loneliness. Like I wonder if there's some link there. Um and when we talk about loneliness, like I'm wondering how is it showing up for you? Because I know that you live with somebody else. I know that you have friends and family who you love to spend time with. So how's it showing up for you?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And that's exactly one of the things that I didn't realize until I have been feeling it, is this understanding that you can live with someone and live with someone great. There's nothing, wrong with my partner. He's wonderful. And I'm not lonely when I'm with him.
Yeah.
Um, Although I say that there is a space in my life that he can't and shouldn't have to fill. So that, I guess, it is still there. But yeah, that it can be something that's experienced, even if you're not fully alone.
Mm.
And I think the hardest part is it feels like there's an element of shame that accompanies loneliness that doesn't really accompany other emotions for me. Like if I'm feeling heavy emotion, if I'm feeling days where I felt really low, or if I'm feeling anger, these are emotions that I think I've done enough work around, or maybe I'm just used to enough that I don't feel shame around them. I'm comfortable saying, this is how I feel. I know it will pass. This is, it doesn't become, it doesn't hold judgment.
Mhm.
Whereas with loneliness, there's this feeling of, if people view me as a lonely person, that says something about me, or it carries this is my own internal mind talking, that it carries with it this feeling of um loneliness is something that is your fault, because
Mhm.
um if you were to be a better friend, or if you were to involve yourself more, have better routines, then you wouldn't be experiencing these things. And I know from experiencing, hard emotions, there's an element, as we've spoken about, was it last week, where we spoke about bad or unhelpful routines, and how
Mhm.
sometimes we need to crack our own nut a little bit and just get out of our shell. But at the same time, there's um there's a blame associated with it for me, that I think is maybe the hardest thing to feel, because again, it's self-perpetuating then, because the shame isolates, and the shame like um increases the sense of loneliness, because you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to
Mhm.
say, oh, I feel really lonely, because then there's an element of judgment, or there's an element of, oh, why don't you go and join a club? Things like things like that. Um, and yeah, I think that's hard,
Mm.
and how I experience it. So so I've been working from home since, so I left my full-time job in 20, it was either 2018 or 2019. I want to say 2018. So even 2 years or a year and a half or something before the pandemic, I was working from home. And at first, it was really great. So much free time, or at least so much flexible time, could work where I wanted, when I wanted. Um, was 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 putting myself into a lot of new business communities, um, like networking groups, these kinds of things. So maybe I was talking to people a lot more, although I can't really remember doing that. I can't really remember like actually getting on calls with anyone or talking to anyone. But I think it was novel and it was new. And obviously now it's 4 years later, and COVID has there's a lot more people who understand the difficulties of working from home. Like, there's so many benefits, and at the same time, it's it is isolating. It can be isolating. Um, you don't have that, even the mundane elements of working in an office. The, hey, how you doing? Or the, like, should we go to Pret and grab a sandwich? Are you going out for lunch? That kind of thing. You don't
Mhm.
have any of that. And you don't hear other people. I think that was the main thing that I didn't, was I didn't get other people. I
Okay.
would cast and that kind of thing.
Just lost you
Am I
for a
back?
minute there. You're back, yes.
Am I back? Okay, perfect. Where did you hear me from?
It was just that last sentence that cut out slightly.
Hmm. Yeah, so I didn't really prep myself for the fact that I wouldn't hear other people. And I put on podcasts and stuff in the background, but they're not, real people, you know. So it's been like a very slow wearing down of the number of people who I interact with. And then COVID hits, and obviously there was like a huge uptick in online communication, and then we all sort of like shuffled into our interior lives. Um, and and yeah, it's increased from then. I think I have met, there are some people who do really well with digital communication, with social media, with keeping up with online communities and stuff like that. I'm not one of those people. I'm not very good with my phone. I don't enjoy long WhatsApp interactions. Um, I'm pretty good with voice notes, but I'm not like a quick responder. So it's just sort of, it's felt as though the work the work sort of connection went, and then slowly from there little other pieces of the ways that I communicate with people, the last of my friends, I'm looking at you, Emma, moved moved to a different place. And that was sort of the last person who I had. You were the last person who I had locally. And before that, my friends just sort of trickled away one by one to move to different locations. And so it's just been a slow, gradual sort of descent into this feeling.
Yeah. And you said that last bit then about your friends slowly moving away. It made me wonder if every generation experiences a version of this.
Mm,
It made me wonder if it's because it's easy for us to kind of think, and they definitely play a role, but it's easy for us to think it's because we work from home, it's because we've been through this COVID experience of distancing and isolating. And I definitely they must have a big effect. I mean, we have no idea really still, do we, the effect on people's psyches of that experience. But I also wonder if there's something about the age that we are, and and I wonder if this had happened to like our parents and our parents' parents as well, at this point where people's lives become like less focused on friendships and socializing and more focused on other things. And I'm a massive fan of the Friends television series. And when I was watching the reunion, I saw one of the creators of it saying, we wanted to create something that just explored that period of time where your friends become your family.
yeah.
And it's that period where your friends are the most important thing, and that's all that matters. And you don't really have other responsibilities. And they were like, it had to come to an end because that era was coming to an end for those characters. They were into their 30s, they were having children, they were moving for careers. And I wonder whether there's a naturalness to what's happening right now in that way.
Yeah. I, yeah, 100% agree with you. It's such a strange age. It's
Oh,
such, it's like, I think it's, and this is one of the pieces in my article at which I get stuck, because articulating this um, with a sort of full understanding is difficult,
yeah.
especially when I picture my friends reading it. But I think there is an element of that, that is reduced if you have children.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends, they've made new connections in their baby groups, or just in, um, you see um, you know you see different people if you're going to play groups or soft play, that type of thing. And I there the other element is that it's much easier to say kind of like, oh, should we meet up for a coffee? Let's bring the kids. Like we've both got kids, we may as well just, you know, bundle them up and bring them along. And that for me is the difficult part, because I wholeheartedly respect their decision to take that route with their lives, and I'm equally wholeheartedly comfortable with the decision that I've made to not have children. You know, I'm 34. I don't feel like that decision is going to change. As we always say, who knows? You never know what decision's going to. But yeah, at the moment, I'm totally comfortable with it. And yet, that I see that it's much easier to have that sense of like of community and of everyone being together at the same time and experiencing a similar thing if you are in the group of people who are having children. And I think, and I, part of my decision to not have children comes from the fact that I don't enjoy spending a lot of my time in child environments. And I know that they're like, one of my friends, she's so funny. She's like, I love my kid, but I don't enjoy any other people's children. I don't enjoy any of the baby groups. I don't enjoy talking, like small talk, kid talk, can't stand it. So I understand that you don't necessarily have to do it that way. But at the same time, like I haven't yet figured out where the equivalent is for me. And I definitely haven't found it on a local in a local way, in a like, let's meet up for a coffee or let's just bump into people. And because I think there are some online communities that I'm a part of that are really nourishing, and I feel like I could really, they're quite new, so I haven't yet, but I could connect with people deeply in there. But you know, they'll be spread out across the world / over the country, so you're not just going to bump into people. And I do you remember Mary Portas on from British TV fame? So she has a podcast that I've been listening to a bit, because she talks about doing business in a different way. And she references an article, or I think it was a book. It was a book written in like the 1960s, called "The Death and Life of American Cities," or something like that. The maybe Great American Cities or something. Written by Jane someone, but either way. And it talks about how community life, even in the 60s, like, so exactly what you're saying, the richness of life is in the moments that are like bumping into someone on the street, or always seeing the same person when you go to a certain place at a certain time, and having a sort of like laugh about that. That's what makes our lives, you know, that's what gives us texture and makes our days enjoyable. And the thing that she was writing about in this book was the American town planners at the time were focusing on building out of town, like the big malls. So that would then displace all the people from those little interactions. They wouldn't have those anymore, because you don't have to go to the town for any reason. And obviously this was Mary Portas's thing back in the day. It was about the rejuvenation of the British High Street. And yeah, like, so I think it is something that is dealt with by in most ages, and I just haven't found where my enjoyness, like where my nourishment, where those interactions, those enjoyable day moments are in this age, in my experience of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And like, I think that there can be a tendency for us to think, well, it's okay for this generation because they have the internet. So
Mm.
that you can connect online, you can find your community online, you can meet people who you would never have had the chance to meet, who you share like deeply held values with. But it's not the same, right? It's not the same, of course. It's beautiful in its own way, but I don't necessarily think that it fills that gap that you're talking about. So I really get that
Mm.
that's not giving you that, and it's giving you something else, maybe
Yeah.
something else other generations didn't have access to, which is amazing, but it's not filling that gap.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you can't just bump into someone on the internet. Just,
Yeah,
I guess the equivalent would be seeing their Instagram story and be like, oh, that's like, I love that. That looks really great.
yeah,
Which is, a fleeting little interaction and then you move on. Um, but yeah, there's not the texture there. Um,
yeah,
and alongside all of those fleeting, enjoyable interactions, you then have, whether or not social media or technology is also taking from you at the same time as it's giving from you. As you say, we don't really know the impact of spending half an hour on social media scroll in enough depth to know whether or not those interactions increase, give you more than they're taking, than just the act of scrolling is taking from you.
yeah,
Or maybe we do know enough and I haven't done that research, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and I guess like what you were saying earlier about the feeling of shame accompanying it, right? I guess it's because it makes you feel like you should be able to fix this issue. Like you've caused it somehow, like you're at cause for this. And so I wonder if like realizing that every generation experiences it in their own way is a bit of a balm for that feeling that you didn't cause this. Um it's part of being human.
Yeah, yeah, I can feel that.
Mm.
And I think some of the shame is tied to like an understanding of, I wonder if it sort of dates back to school and that kind of thing, being the popular crowd, or the people with the most friends are obviously the best. The people with who are really busy, who have all of their social interactions and everything, they're obviously the best people because they're like in demand. And so maybe it pulls on something like that, something very both um like taught personally. Oh, why is my Mac gonna die? Oh, it's because my charger's not totally in. There we go. Yeah, it harks on something personal like from school, but then also pulls on something very ancient. Those social hierarchies are life and death back back in ancient times. So yeah, I think there's definitely something in shedding the that sort of um yeah, I guess it's like a self projection, like a self judgment, and like it's not true, it's not real, this idea that the people with the most friends, with the most social interactions, are the best people. um with my 34-year-old brain, I can look back on school and know that wasn't true, so I can apply it to myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if there's like a different way of capturing those moments, that you were talking about. And because I lived in a town that I grew up in until like this year. So it was very common that if I walked through that town, I would see lots of people that I knew. And something I've noticed, obviously I don't have that now because I've moved, but something that I notice as beautiful, and maybe this is more in the UK than in other countries because we still have little towns and we still have little independent shops. I don't know how much other countries have that. Probably the same in Europe, but maybe not elsewhere. Is talking to strangers.
Mm.
And I think that we have lost this ability a little bit because of the phones, right? So if we're sitting alone at a train station, or we're sitting alone in a restaurant, our partner's gone to the bathroom, right? We are so trained to just get out our phone rather than like sit there. And I'm thinking back to like a couple of little instances in the past year where I've talked to strangers, and noticing right now, like it felt good at the time, but noticing right now, like how really good it felt to talk to
Yeah.
strangers is interesting for me. And because I'm not hearing, it doesn't sound like you're saying that the loneliness is actually, it's the answer is not to go and join a club. The answer is not to book in more coffees with friends. Like it's not really those things that are going to make a difference. It's this connection to other humans in like
Mm.
very real human ways. And um I wonder if there's something in that of looking up from our phones more and seeing who's there and talking to people and like making little comments to strangers that might feel uncomfortable but lead to like a beautiful, surprising interaction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I could 100% be better with my existing friends. I think I've relied so long on long periods of silence followed by intense, real nourishing like weekends spent together and that kind of thing. That's
Mhm.
generally how my my friendships operate, and not from any sort of not wanting to talk in between or anything negative. It's just um yeah, when I see them it's perfect and that's wonderful. um and I guess the in between times have been much more made up of people that I've seen day to day or people who I work with or things like that. And now that not only have I lost the day to day, but I've also lost those nourishing weekends, just as we're saying, due to life changes, and or at least they're going to happen much more rarely. Um, then it's like I think that's the like damaging equation that results in this feeling. And so yeah, one way I'm not going to get back those weekends. I'm not going to get back the life pre-kids or the life of our 25-year-old friends era, like it's not going to happen. um but yeah, I can get back more of a day to day. And I and I think noticing that I'm not so willing, or I think for a long time I've sort of pressured myself to be like, okay, well, you need to talk to your friends more day to day. You need to get on your phone more or message them more, or whatever it is. Um, and then never really enjoying those interactions. So it never feels the same. Not that I don't enjoy talking to my friends. Of course I do, but it's the method that I find enjoyable. So yeah, the day to day I can I can do a little bit more of, and then at some point they're obviously in baby time right now. So when their kids are older, the weekends will be easier. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's the equation. So if I can only focus on one half of the equation,
Mm.
I can't solve the whole thing. but that's okay right now.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I was just, thinking about I have a friend who we lived together for a year when we were 18, and then she moved away. She moved to Spain. She stayed there for a number of years, and then when she moved back to this country, she moved, hours away. And something I really love about my friendship with her is we won't talk for months. Like there won't even be a text, there won't be anything at all. I've never gone and visited her for some reason. It just hasn't happened. She has not come and visited me. And yet every now and again, one of us will message and be like, should we have a call? And we sit on the phone for like an hour to an hour and a half. Just we did it just this weekend, which is why it's in my head.
Mm.
Um, and there's that feeling of like straight back in. There's that feeling of like this is such a safe connection. This is such a safe
Yeah,
relationship. And I think the beauty in it for me is the lack of pressure to keep up with each other's lives constantly. Like
yeah,
we probably only speak, we probably only do these hourly calls maybe like 2 or 3 times a year. So it might be like 6 months goes by before we speak again.
yeah,
There's probably been gaps that have been longer than that over this, however, 15-year period. Um, but something that's really special to me about that is I don't feel any pressure to do this like, hey, how are you? How's like
yeah,
texting thing. Um, and I think it's because we both acknowledge that there's actually not very much richness there for our friendship. Like the richness comes through having a more intensive conversation less regularly. And she's really the only person that I have that with, which is interesting to me. Like a lot of my other friendships are, I do feel the pressure to like check in and make sure I'm being present and make sure I'm, doing this. But I wonder whether that's a result of our tech upbringing, right? This like constant fast communication, like everything's sped up so quickly because if you think only like 100 years ago, if you wanted to get in touch with somebody, you had to write them a letter. And
yeah,
then that letter had to like make its way across the country, right, on like very slow um transport. They had to read it and get it, and then they had to send you one back. Like it would take weeks to be
yeah.
in conversation with somebody. Um, Whereas my cousin, who is a decade younger than me, I really remember this moment once where she was talking about this boy hadn't messaged her back, and I was like, "Oh well, how long's it been?" And her honest to God, she said 11 minutes. And I was just like, "What?" I was like, "He's probably gone to the bathroom or something." Like, it's fine. Um,
Oh, do you remember those 11 minutes though? Like, so when you were waiting for a boy to text you back, 11 minutes was a lifetime.
a lifetime. But I feel like we've gotten into that, and like I think I'm okay at doing this. Like I sometimes it takes me up to 30 days to reply to an email someone sends me, and I have emails sitting in my inbox right now that are like 3 weeks old that I'm thinking, oh, there's like I'm getting ready to reply to that email. Like, but
Yeah.
so I can do it in my work life quite well. But I do wonder if this is also a product, yeah, of the time we live in, of this um, constant need to quickly respond to things.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And how much that says about being a good friend, or
Mm.
what the kind of the parameters we've set up about what makes a good friend. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because when I consider that question or think about that for myself, I know that I am a good friend. I can listen. I I can, we laugh a lot, and I'm there for people. but I'm not going to message every day. And I think, that's, or every week even.
Mm.
It's, and I think I've been, um, or something has been really telling me that that's what makes me a bad friend.
Interesting. Yeah, so maybe it's just a shift in like our parameters and our ideas of like what a good friendship is and like what those measures are for friendship, because I think it's important to question that. I mean, I know you and I do this a lot in our businesses, like we question
Yeah.
things and we're curious about things that may not be true for us that are the standard. Like we're saying, um, we'll know what's my measure of success
Yeah.
personally to me. It's not what the world has told me it is. And like maybe there's just space to do that in friendships in every area of life as well. Like actually I think my friendship with this woman I was telling you about, like that's such a successful friendship for me, and I talk to her 2 or 3 times a year. Like that's
Yeah.
it. We don't go and visit. We don't make plans. She sometimes messages me if she's in the area because she, comes to visit family. But she tells me like the day before. She's like, by the way, I'm in town tomorrow. Want to have a coffee? Like,
Yeah.
and there's an ease in that. And I wonder if I wonder what makes it okay for us to have this, because I know that there's friendships who maybe this wouldn't feel okay with. And I think it's because we set that tone um early, like that was set 15 years ago that this is the dynamic. So I guess trying to change a dynamic that's not that feels a bit more risky. It feels like a
Yeah.
pulling away. Um, but I wonder what we can do there, because there's definitely friendships where I feel pressure to like be in touch more because I care, right? And this is the point, like it's because you care about these people that you feel like this. So yeah, I wonder if there's a way to like almost press a reset button on what being a great friend means.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's I think the part that maybe I haven't been analyzing it like that, and I also I haven't found the way to express the way that I'm a good friend, in a way that has sort of felt good within this new time that we're in. It's both, for our ages, for our family structures, um in a increasingly digital world, all of those things. Haven't found the way to that feels right. I haven't settled into a rhythm. There's like a group of jackdaws on my lawn. They've found something really tasty. There's like a load of them just came down. But yeah, I haven't found the way to do that. And so I'm like failing on both ends here, because I'm not doing the middle part, and I'm not expressing the thing that feels good. Um and I think that's important to note, like not from a for like slamming down on myself, but also just like, okay, where can I do a little better on in a way that feels really good. um my There's a friend who I love dearly. She's one of my oldest friends, and she is a exceptional communicator in that she does really well at keeping up with people, and she has a lot of friends, and I we do, it works for us to have like phone calls in, but because I've been struggling with various things over the last 6 months, she's asked for a call, and it hasn't felt like a good thing for me to do, so I haven't. um but I could definitely do better in the way that I want to do better, and
Yeah,
just forget about the texting, or the replying, or all those sorts of things.
I think that's really interesting, that you say that, right? That like actually because you know, when you say that, oh, there's shame around this, right? I think the tendency is whenever there's shame or that someone feels shame, for us to be like, no, 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 you should never feel shame, right? You should never feel that. Like you're great. Like we want to be like, never feel that. It's okay. But actually, like sometimes that feeling is, it does have a valuable message for us. Like not always, like sometimes it's toxic and it's just you know, unhelpful patterning or whatever. But I think sometimes it's saying like, actually there is something you want to do more of. Like
Mm.
there is something you actually want to do that you're not doing. So then that feeling is highlighting that to you. So it has a purpose, like it has a validity there. And this is so, you know, I had a conversation with someone recently who said, um, you know, my mind is telling me that like I've got some limiting beliefs about how I can't run a business. I don't know how to run a business. Um, and you know, I said, well, have you ever run a business before? And they said no. And it's like, well, that might not be a limiting belief. There may be some unhelpful beliefs about it that you can look at, but there's also a truth in that. There's also a, I've never done this before. I don't know how to do it. I need those practical skills to be built. So
Yeah.
I think like sometimes our unhelpful emotions and feelings can be, I don't know, we want to bat them away all the time, but like sometimes they have an actually important message for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. Like um, there is always, not always, as you say, but there is an indication that there's a message that even if the message is just like you're not doing very well right now,
Mm.
um, like there's a message in whatever that's communicating, emotions, um under just a chemical cocktail or just a release of hormones or in our bloodstream
Mm.
released for a reason or in response to a stimuli, and sometimes that stimuli is not particularly true or real or helpful,
Yeah.
but sometimes it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like if my brain is saying, my thoughts are saying like, oh, you're just so lazy, right? Like I have two options there. It feels like I can either be like, that's just my mean inner voice and I need to just ignore that, right? And it's not valid almost. And then there's like the other way of being like, oh, it's true, and now I feel awful. I feel like there's this middle path of being like, okay, well that hurt, like that felt hard to hear, but what's true here? Like, because actually I don't want to carry on just not doing the things that I say I'm gonna do. Like I want to find the energy for those things. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And um I guess there's the beauty in the challenging experiences, the challenging thoughts and feelings. Like there's the beauty in the loneliness, is that actually it might prompt you to do those things that you really want to do so that
Yeah.
you can have the friendships you really want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I
Mm.
think, that's exactly why I wanted to explore this topic, just because, um, you know, loneliness is increasing. I think a lot of people, especially people who didn't maybe expect they would experience loneliness, or from the outside, I, I have a secure relationship, I have friends, all those kind of things, um, with people you don't think experience loneliness. And yet it's something that as a society we're experiencing, we're having to deal with maybe a bit more than we have before, or maybe it's just this age, maybe at this age we have to experience it or deal with it more than we did before, um and so it's important to explore it, like just kind of pick it apart a little bit, to talk about it in ways that are open, and be curious about what it is, and be willing to understand it on in all of its dimensions.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Mhm. Does it feel like there's anything unsaid here about this topic?
I don't think so. Not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, no, me either. That feels like a good place to end.
Thank you.
Thank you.